as we enter the beginning of 2023, we're into February already. We wanted to have the opportunity to share some exciting initiatives. And I'm hoping that some of you are aware of some of what I'll talk about, but some of the information I share may be new to you. And so I'll give a little overview. I'm not going to get into great detail on the various initiatives because we really want to reserve this time for a discussion and an opportunity to dig deeper into the areas that you may have questions about. So you may have heard that the state has received some federal funding through the American Rescue Plan Act. That's ARPA. So you'll hear about ARPA a lot over the next couple of years. And this funding is, it must be reinvested into enhancing, expanding, and strengthening our community-based Medicaid supports. And it needs to be invested. The funding is available through March of 2025. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to transform our DDS system. It's very exciting and it's really massive. The resources that we have available to us are going to allow us to really expand service options and to think creatively about how to expand services, individualized services in the community for people. So overall, the ARPA initiatives are about maximizing independence, integration, and individualized services. We want the individuals we support to have the same opportunities as everyone else, determining how they live their own lives within their communities. I want to say at the outset, yes, we will be looking at providing supports outside of the traditional group home or congregate day program models that we have, but this is not about taking services away from people. It's not about closing group homes. The plans as they are made will be made thoughtfully with the entire team participating and with a safety net to fall back on for people who may try new options if they don't work. So I'm going to dig into more specifics about the specific ARPA projects in a moment, but I do want to emphasize that these are huge initiatives and it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of resources, and a lot of communication. How are we going about approaching this? We have a lot of stakeholder input. We've hired staff and consultants. Some of you may know my predecessor, Peter Mason. He is back with DDS as the ARPA project manager. He's been doing a great job. And we've been working with our DDS staff, making sure that they're engaged and aware of the various initiatives. We've been talking with providers. We had a provider forum just yesterday. And obviously, probably most importantly, are these sessions with individuals and families. And I've got to say, these sessions have been incredibly well attended. We've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people sign up for these forums. So that's really exciting to us. I do want to introduce our regional leadership who are on the call. Stacy Silva Gordon, Regional Director for the North Region. Would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Silva Gordon, and I look forward to this conversation tonight.
Thanks, Stacy. I don't know if there are any other members of the North Region leadership team or any members of our various leads of our ARPA initiatives. If there are, feel free to say hello. I can't see the attendance list.
Hello, Patricia Simbala. I'm doing the Assistive Technology Initiative, lead for the Assistive Technology ARPA funds.
Hi, Patricia.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you. All right. So let me get into some specifics around these initiatives. I'm going to just kind of give an overview of all of the different initiatives, and then we can dig into any questions that you have. And I did want to share that in addition to our ARPA leads, we have had a number of committees that have been working for several months on the different aspects of the ARPA projects. We have an overall ARPA advisory committee on transformation. We have a residential advisory committee. We have a day and employment services advisory committee. We have a committee that's been working specifically with individuals and families and making sure that individuals and families are engaged in the process. And then we have another committee that's focused on DDS engagement, making sure that we're communicating and engaging with our case managers, our resource administration, everyone within our DDS system who has got to be knowledgeable about these ARPA services. I mentioned that we have our ARPA team led by Peter Mason. We also have engaged with some consultants. We have Deloitte Consulting that is working with us around project management. Because it is such a massive effort within a very condensed time frame, we are working very closely to make sure that we stay on track and that we stick to the timeframes that we've established. And we're also working with another group that's helping with communication. And we're going to be producing some videos, some really nice materials that should help with communication. So what are these initiatives I'm talking about? What a lead up. The first is stabilizing the provider network. I think everyone's pretty well aware, whether you self-direct, whether you're affiliated with agencies, that staffing has been an issue. Staffing stability is probably the number one barrier that we face when we're looking at providing services. Our private providers are struggling, and I know it's been a real challenge for people who self-direct. We have made 2 payments thus far that are designed to stabilize our provider network. They're dedicated to retaining good quality staff and recruiting staff in areas where there may be vacancies. And so that was the first thing that happened, and we're starting to get some feedback that it has been helpful. It may not have completely turned around the staffing issues that providers are experiencing, but it may have stabilized to some extent. They may not be getting worse, which is a start. The next ARPA initiative is what Patricia mentioned, expanding and integrating the use of assistive technology. We have funding for many different assistive technology initiatives. We've issued notices of opportunity. There are 2 that are active right now. So if you looked at our website and looked at assistive technology notices of opportunity, there are opportunities for people who live at home with their families who may benefit from assistive technology, and people who receive services where the provider of services can submit for funding for assistive technology. We're going to have additional opportunities for expanded assistive technology evaluations. And we anticipate, we have our remote support service up and running, and we anticipate that we will have a pretty rapid expansion of remote support for people who think that option may work for them. Enhancing self-direction. For those of you who may self-direct, we've enhanced our employment platform, Rewarding Work. You should be seeing some of those enhancements in the weeks and months ahead. This has been it's like a similar to Career Builder or other employment websites that we've had in place for some time, but this funding has allowed them to really, they will really be increasing the features on the Rewarding Work website. We also are using some of this funding around improving the roles and responsibilities of the fiscal intermediary. And I know that that's been an interest by many. Another area, there are several initiatives that relate to strengthening the quality of supports within our DDS system and providing us with a feedback loop to gather details on satisfaction of supports. We're expanding NCI, the National Core Indicators. We are looking at our case management system and increasing capacity there. We're looking at how we manage critical incidents, a number of areas that will solidify our internal quality systems within DDS. And then probably the area that you may have heard in other presentations is the system transformation. Transforming our residential and day settings. It's been called the Moving On Plan. And it's where individuals and their teams have the opportunity to look at redefining how they live and work in their communities. We want folks to consider integrating new types of supports to allow them to be more independent. We've funneled planning tools. We have provided our qualified providers with templates in terms of how they may look at transforming systems within their agencies, but these conversations, these actual conversations will happen at the individual and the team level. These are not decisions that are going to be made organizationally. These actual plans will happen in conversations at the team level. So that's a very, very high level overview of the various ARPA initiatives. One that I failed to mention, but I would suspect there may be a fair amount of interest in is expansion of supportive housing. And I say that because this is the North region, and the North region is where supportive housing was, I think our first 3 supportive housing developments were in the North region. So I think folks on this call may be familiar. The first developments were what we called I-, and now we've expanded beyond I- to other housing developments that have been opening up around the state. And one of the ARPA initiatives is to expand supportive housing. There'll be the developments take a couple of years from plan to move in. You know, they're big projects and they take a couple of years, but we're looking at expanding supportive housing by identifying maybe existing apartment complexes that may be used with the rental assistance vouchers to also have some set aside units with the similar type of support that we have in the supportive housing programs that have opened thus far. So that's an overview. At this point, I think I want to open it up to the group. I'm really interested in your feedback, any questions that you have. We have the chat that is available, or you can raise your hand. I have a couple people that are helping me to monitor the chat and help make sure that any question, that we don't miss any questions. If there are questions today that that we may need to follow up on, that's fine. We will take the information and follow up immediately. We've been doing that after the forums, and so we've had some really nice discussions following these forums to work out any specific issues that may not be for the large group, but may require some follow-up. So I thank you for putting your cameras on. It's really nice for me to see faces, and I'm opening it up for questions.
So Elisa, we do have one question that was placed in the chat by Wayne Camaro. He wants to know, when will more details be available on the ARPA initiatives?
Well, I can give more details on any of the initiatives today. And if you go to our website, on the left-hand side, you'll see in the gray box, I think it says ARPA initiatives. And if you click on that, you're going to get a ton of information that'll be available to you. I mentioned the different committees that are meeting. As they've been meeting, those meetings are recorded, so you can watch those meetings. There's meeting minutes. You'll see, if you're interested particularly in day transformation, you can go to the day transformation work group and you'll find all of the discussions that have been happening around day transformation. Gunnar has put that link in the chat, so you don't even have to search for it. It's right there. There is a lot of information that's already available. And then I mentioned that we're working with McDowell Consulting, and their focus is on communication. So there will be, I think we'll have some videos that'll be available. There have been a number of surveys that have gone out. There have been some informational forums that have been held. You will get pretty consistently throughout this process outreach and information. We're going to have a newsletter that will speak to the various initiatives, and this forum tonight is really to provide you with any information that you might be interested in.
And Lisa, can I just chime in? And for those who don't know who I am, I'm Kevin Bronson. I'm the communications director at DDS. But I also want to add in that we're going to consistently have more of these type conversations as well, because in the past, we've found that these are great opportunities for us to hear more information from you guys and us to provide information to individuals and families. So I think it's helpful both ways.
Thanks, Kevin. Susan, I see you have your hand up.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, thank you. So I appreciate you having us together. And sorry for the background noise. Dinner's going on behind me, but my question, or my kind of comment, is that, and I think you've heard this from me before, housing has been established primarily west of the river, and we're east. I'm in Tolland. We're up in the quiet corner so much, and we're looking for how to get that kind of a development and that kind of an effort up in our area. And we have our state representative interested as well. So any ideas on that front?
I do. And Susan, you have brought this up before, and it's really nice to be able to say I do have some ideas.
Great.
The ARPA initiative around expanding supportive housing. One of our focus is identifying geographical areas where there isn't already a development that's in process or has opened. And so I anticipate that more information will be going out in the very near future. And what we'll be looking at is where, say the IDASH in Canton, they identified the plan, and then it took about 2.5 years to build that Bear Woods development and then have it ready for people to move in. We're looking at where there may be some existing apartment complexes or developments where there may be a relationship that can be identified between the building manager, the owner, a provider, and really start to look at existing complexes that may be used for supportive housing. So I think that's going to open up a lot of options. It doesn't have that 2.5-year, 3-year lead time, and there, I know some communities are more rural than others, but I think will be focused on those areas that haven't already had some development. So hopefully that that may open up some opportunities in your neck of the woods.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Elisa,
Joseph?
we
Oh,
do-
I see Joseph has his hand up.
Hi, thank you. And you know, this is very exciting and so forth, but one of the concerns that I had at Mark in Middletown is just the rate of payment for the employees, both at the day program and the group homes. In particular, you know, as people stay on more years as employee, increasing their pay and so forth. I know they've gotten a modest pay increase recently, but are there any plans to try to build that out a little bit to compensate these very important employees?
There have been, aside from ARPA, there has been legislation that has allowed increases to occur within our service system. So that has increased the minimum hiring rate, and then for people that are currently within working in our system to have increases. That was happening prior to the ARPA initiatives. The ARPA provider stability payments allow, so providers have a discretion in terms of how the funds are used, but the primary focus is recruiting staff and retaining staff. And
Right.
so some providers have done, you know, longevity bonuses. They may have hiring bonuses. They've been used in a variety of different ways, but with the purpose of retaining good staff and attracting quality people to our field. And so it's been substantial funding, and so hopefully that it translates to the staff that you're identifying.
Right, because without this quality staff, all these programs really, they need people to work, right? So, and
For
quality
sure.
people. That, so.
For sure. And we can talk about every great initiative and great ideas and, you know, develop this. And if there are not staff, there's not going to be uptake. We know that. We know that because when we have opportunities, there are times often over the last several years that we've heard repeatedly, we sure would love to do that if we had the staff, but we don't have the staff and we're not able to do that. So that's why the staff stability, workforce stability was the #1 priority.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have lost track of the order of the questions. So Gunnar?
Elisa, I do want to hop back over to the chat real quick. Tammy Domian wants to know, what is the process to get on the IDASH supportive housing list?
Hi, Tammy. Good to see you. So each time a supportive housing development opens, so we've had a couple in the North region, 4, I think, in West Hartford, Canton, and Bloomfield at this point. You would talk to your case manager, make them aware that you're interested in supportive housing. And then when a development is getting close to ready, the referrals, people that have expressed interest go to the provider. Those referrals go to the provider and they go through the process of identifying the people for the supportive housing development. As we look at expanding supportive housing through ARPA, I think it will be a much quicker process. So we anticipate, because the developments are already, they're existing developments, we don't have the build out time, that as soon as the relationship is made, you know, providers can start with 1, 2 developments and then build over time. It's not like they have to have 10 apartments and an apartment complex ready to go. And so I think the process will be much quicker with the expanded supportive housing that we're looking at through ARPA. All right, I can go to the next hand that I see, Varian.
Yeah, I had a question. You said something about the roles of the FI or something.
Not you. Yes, I think we are working very, very hard to strengthen the systems. We know that for people who self-direct, it's really important that the systems around the FI are in place, that if there's an issue, it's resolved quickly. And we're putting some resources into making sure that issues coordinating with the FI goes as smoothly as possible. And so that's what I was talking about as far as strengthening the role of the FI. It's good to see you, Marion.
Good to see you too.
Susan?
Okay, unmuted. So since I'm just going to throw this out there because you mentioned that this was a session for ideas, and through just the luck of the chance and the way my daughter draws people to her, we've met some other folks, other parents, grandparents of and a young adult with a very involved disability in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And they have spent the last 10 years developing an inclusive community project called Osprey Village. And if you Google it, you can find everything you need to know about it. The one thing that I can say about it that is different from what we're doing here in Connecticut is it's affordable. The rental costs for the people with disabilities in the community are as low as $200 a month. And I think that's something that's worth looking into as a model, because even our IDASH communities are they're not affordable enough for someone like my daughter, who is not going to perceivably work competitively. So, that rent is not going to work for her. And there are many of others like her. So anyway, just an idea to throw out. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. I will look at Osprey Village and see how they're structuring it. I know the supportive housing is considered low income tax credit programs. And so they're designed to be affordable, and the cost adjusts based on the person's income. I think they're probably not $200 a month for sure, but they're designed to be affordable. I will take a look and see how that's structured and how that's funded, and see if there's anything there that might be replicated.
Thank you.
Okay, Elisa, we'll take one more hand and then we'll get back over to the chat. Susan M., do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, how will the location of housing units be determined? And is it going to be based on individual applications or first come, first serve? My son lives in Glastonbury, and there's a lot of other individuals in Glastonbury that are interested in housing. He's going to be 30. There's other individuals that are in their late 20s into the 40s that are interested in something like this.
So I think what will happen initially is that there will be a call for proposals, opportunity for proposals, and we'll see what comes in. We're looking to have multiple locations around the state, and we're looking to identify those areas that geographically there hasn't been this type of development, so that we can kind of start to address some of those areas where I know that I've heard for several years. I know the commissioner has heard, you know, we're really interested. We'd love something like this in our area. So we'll try to identify those areas where there has not yet been a development. There are developments that are underway across the state right now, but this will be in addition to that. So we'll have to see what we get for proposals. If this is successful, I anticipate that we'll do this more than once. And so our goal is really to expand this type of option across the state pretty rapidly. But that will be the process. We'll put out a call for proposals. We'll see what comes in. We're going to look at multiple opportunities per region. And if that's successful, we'll repeat the process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Elisa, next we have Susan Mather. Susan, if you can unmute.
Susan, for
Susan,
some
can-
reason, I don't think your microphone's working.
Are you still there, Susan?
I thought Susan, I noted Susan's name for the comment around Osprey Village. Was that correct?
There's 3 Susans.
I had Susan Mather, and that's why I want to make sure so that I'm following up with the right person.
Susan L was Osprey Village.
Sorry, Susan Mather, for some reason.
Okay, thank you.
Mic's not working.
All right.
Susan, while you're figuring out your issue with your mic, if you'd like to drop the question in the chat, we can get to it when we get to the bottom of the chat. Elisa, we'll work our way through. Our next question comes from Cynthia Leichsteiner, who wants to know, has it been determined exactly where Mark will establish housing in South Windsor?
I know that there have been discussions. I do not know right now the current status of that. So that I can look into and follow up on. I do know that there have been discussions, but I don't have the current status on that particular development.
Okay, our next question comes from, I'm not sure who this number is associated with, 12035. If you'd like to hop on and clarify your question, they want to know where can we find out a listing of developments in the works. I'm not sure if that's specific to IDASH. Again, if
yes, I'm sorry, this is Bill Costello. Yes, I've looked several times on your webpage. I can't. Is there a listing of developments or people working on various housing situations throughout the state? I mean, you've mentioned some on this call, but you've also mentioned some in the works throughout the whole state. Where can we find those and start to kind of help out or work towards expanding that list? I mean, it's kind of like, I've been on several of these calls over the last year, and I really can't pinpoint where we are in this process. You know, we don't live in the Hartford area. I don't. And I'm in central Connecticut, and just looking for one page to go to with a listing of all your IDASH things in the works.
We do have a list. There are about 9 developments right now that are in process. In January was the deadline for the next round of submissions, and we should hear, we will hear from CHFA sometime in the spring what has been approved for this cycle. So the application process, DDS writes a letter of support for the vouchers, the actual WRAP vouchers, but the application process is a Department of Housing, CHFA process. We learn when they release the decisions which developments have been approved. But for the 9 or 10 that are in process, we do have a tracking sheet, and I can follow up on our website is We've been holding forums on a monthly basis. They're called the Fourth Tuesday Forums on Innovative Options. They're held the fourth Tuesday of every month. So they're very predictable from 3 to 4:30. And if you go on our website, go to Fourth Tuesday Forums, there are forums on all of the options that have taken place thus far. The first one was on supportive housing. Within the presentation, I know Steve Morris shared the developments that were in process. What I can do is take our tracking sheet and I'll add that on the supportive housing page of our website. And that way, and we updated it whenever we get new information, when we get the new round of approvals from CHFA, we will update that, but it'll have any developments that have been approved thus far. That's a great point, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Elisa, next we have a hand raised by Rick and Faye Lenz. Rick and Faye, if you want to unmute.
Hi, Alyssa.
Hi.
Thank you for doing this. It's very helpful. I would be interested in knowing or hearing about some examples of what's new in assistive technology, since that's the key for a lot of people to more independent housing.
Well, I will kick us off, and then we have our assistive technology lead on the call, and so I'll add to that. What's happening in assistive technology, we saw over the last several years, assistive technology options really expanded. Look at us right now meeting via Zoom. A lot of services had a period of time that they were provided virtually. People got much more familiar with and comfortable using technology. So there's been a lot that has happened in the area of utilizing iPads, apps. I mentioned remote supports, which is a new service option that's designed not to replace staff, but to supplement supports for times that staff or natural supports are not there. And that has a range of technology. It may be something like sensors, so that if the door opens, there's an alert. If there's unusual movement, there's an alert. It may have technology that we use in our homes, the Alexa or the Echo. I shouldn't even say the names. I'll probably have one of them wake up to help with recipes, cooking. Two-way communication is a piece of remote support, so that somebody can visually be available remotely, but where they can see one another, and there's two-way communication. There are safeguards that are built in, and each person's technology is unique to that person. There may be medication minders. Med minders have been revolutionary as far as helping people to safely take their medication independently, but safely. And they're very, very easy to use. They're set up in advance, and there are reminders so that the person knows, oh, it's time to take my medication. They can't open the wrong, they can only take the right dosage at the right time. So that's something that's new, that's been incredibly helpful. And Patricia, I'll open it up to you if there are other areas where you've seen that there's been a lot of movement in assistive technology.
We covered a lot of it, Lisa. Yeah, there are a lot of advances actually in assistive technology. Lisa mentioned the sensors. The sensors are actually really good. Sometimes with lack of movement, they've discovered that someone wasn't feeling well. They were sick because they weren't moving around their apartment very much. There can also be, movement at night and 2, 3 in the morning. So they realize maybe they had, some visitors over that shouldn't have been there. So we've discovered a lot just through sensors, but there's also sensors that you could put in the toilet per se. And if someone's urinating very often, you can tell that they have a urinary tract infection. We have what we use every day, but it really is, what Elise had said, it's very custom to the person. There's advanced technology and there's very simple technology. So it really comes down to what your needs are. And the most advanced technology isn't always a solution for a person. Sometimes it's just something simple like, Velcro on your shoes because, you have trouble tying them, or a pen, something that helps you grip a pencil better. So
I
there's
know.
yeah, one of the things we're working on this is technology is these lockers that'll have assistive technology within them so that we can lend different technologies so that families and individuals can borrow them, try them. So try it before you buy it. So they're temperature controlled lockers. And if there was something that you felt was good for someone that you knew who was receiving services from DDS, they would then go to the locker, they would have a code, they would open the locker, take out the device, use it, see if they liked it, and then return it, and then purchase it if they did feel that they needed it.
Kind of like a lending library.
Lending library, exactly.
If any of you have family members that utilize the DDS respite centers, our respite centers have all been outfitted as smart homes. So they have technology throughout so that when people are staying for respite, they can try various devices or various forms of technology. Induction stoves are another incredible breakthrough to make sure that people don't burn themselves. They're only hot when the pan is on the stove. When that pan comes off the stove, you can touch the burner and it's no longer hot. So there is so much. I know the commissioner always gives an example, and it's one that I think really speaks volumes. So some people are not continent and they have to be checked to see if they've been incontinent or soiled themselves, and that may happen historically, every 2 hours throughout the night. There are now sensors that are in Depends or in adult undergarments that detect moisture. They'll alert somebody that the person's wet, and if they're not alerted, then the person can continue to sleep without somebody going in and checking them every 2 hours. That, as far as quality of life, is a great example of technology that really can be transformative as far as, number one, the alert is there, so immediately they're attended to, but to not be woken up throughout the night to just check. And so that's a great example of where technology can really make a vast difference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will say we do have, if you're thinking about technology, you can certainly reach out to Patricia. We do have 2 notices of opportunities. And what that means is if there is particular technology, or if you're interested in an assessment, assistive technology assessment is where somebody will come out and look at the home, look at the environment, and really make recommendations on what type of technology might be beneficial. There's funding that's available right now through ARPA, and you could submit for that, and it's a rolling, there's not a deadline, an immediate deadline, but it's available for people who live at home with their families. Also people who receive services, the provider can submit. And so if you're contemplating, you're not even sure, could technology be beneficial? An evaluation would give you a lot more specific information on what type of technology might be helpful for the particular person.
Great.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
So Elisa, our next question comes from Kurt Danforth. Kurt wants to know, he says, in the fall Zoom, we talked about working to improve the information available to locate both day programs and group homes. We are trying to connect with day services near Southington, but need a list to work with for both us and our case manager. Is something like that available?
There is. You can, on our website, you can search by town to see what services are available in the particular town. If the case manager is having trouble, that's what you're saying. The case manager should be able to identify services by town, but if they're having trouble, they should reach out to their supervisor who may be able to help them. You can sort and see if you were to put in Southington, you'd see all of the providers that provide services in Southington, and then you can see which of those providers provide day services. We also have, we haven't talked a lot about day and employment, but we also have an incredible day and employment services team. And we have some initiatives around employment. So if there are people who have an interest in being employed, but they haven't been successful, they just have not, for whatever reason, found the right opportunity, or they need maybe some adaptations in their workplace, or they've thought about it, but they're nervous, whatever that may be. We have a new service that we're offering called customized employment. And so for people who want employment and they know exactly what they want to do, we've always had supports around employment. But for people who've really struggled, they want employment and they haven't been successful, customized employment is a little bit more support to help them take their particular interests, the things that they're really passionate about, and it's a very supported process to help identify an opportunity that might work in that case. And there is funding for customized employment, and it's not out of the day program budget. So if somebody's in a day program, they're in a DSO, for example, a day support option, but they were interested in employment, there are resources right now where they could continue, they continue to have their DSO funding, but they could go through this customized employment process. And the agencies that provide customized employment, their staff go through a credentialing process. They have to be trained, they need to be certified, so that they're skilled, they know what they're doing, and they will support the individual through the process. And the goal at the end is that there's a identified position, a job that they have been able to obtain. There are ongoing supports that go along with it, and the success rate is pretty good. So that's something to consider if you've been nervous about employment or.
So Elisa, our situation is a little different. Our son needs one-on-one support in a day program. So as you expect, the response they're getting is that there's no staff available. And it's a little complicated because our case managers in the South region, it may be a little complicated for them to be. And we've had a few transitions of case managers over the past 12 months with the retirements. But other than that, things are going well. The way it used to work on the website was there was sort of like a PDF file for each agency, but it didn't actually say, like, if they provided services in Southington, it didn't say where the day program location was. Do you have something now that does that?
That information is available. Let me follow up specifically to give you that specific information, Kurt. And the one-to-one staffing issue. So it sounds like there has been some outreach to some providers, but that level of support gets back to the staffing issue. So I don't know if you've talked with your case manager about maybe individualized day, something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a complicated story, but basically he's in a residential setting now, and with Edelbrook, and Edelbrook is looking to move him into a Southington home, which they're working with DDS to actually turn into a CLA to support him. So there's all kinds of work going on, really, but The holdup now is finding basically how to cover his day.
He's got to have a day
You
program
know.
before he can move.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think what I'm gonna do, I've got your name. I'm gonna follow up with our day and employment services team so that they can work with you and your case manager specifically.
That'd be great.
We'll follow up after.
Excellent.
Great.
Good to meet you.
Thank
Bob.
Elisa, we do have a few more questions in the chat. The next one
Okay.
comes from Jim Clyburn. Jim wants to know, who does the request for proposals go out to? And Jim, if you'd like to come on and clarify whether or not that's regarding I-dash housing.
Yeah.
Jim, are you there?
Well, you were talking about getting proposals from who to set up or build one of these new facilities. So who's requesting? Typically, a contractor would be saying, I'm going to renovate this area or we're going to use this space. Is that what you're talking about?
So the traditional supportive housing where it's been a development, it's a process where developers partner with DDS providers. The developer is putting in the proposal around the housing, and then there's a DDS provider that would be the service provider. And that's the process I talked about that goes through Department of Housing and CHFA. The project would get approved and then there would be a build out. When I'm talking about supportive housing, expanding supportive housing, we're looking at existing developments. So apartment complexes that are already out there where providers can reach out to building managers and building owners, property owners, and I work out an arrangement where apartments could be set aside for people. And what makes supportive housing is that there are what are called these rental assistance vouchers. They're vouchers that really cover the cost of housing. They make it affordable housing. And so we would provide rental assistance vouchers. And the provider would work with the property manager and the owner to identify units within existing apartments.
Okay, so like Lavender Fields in Bloomfield?
Yep.
In just a very simple fashion, that's a pretty new building.
It's brand new,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, and so like the one out in Canton, that's up on the hill there, Bear Woods or Bear Hills, all of
Bear
that.
Woods,
There
yeah.
are, so the developer, somebody who is building those anyway, how would that developer, so let's say I have a unit of 40 apartments right now that I own, and I've got a property management company doing that. How would I even know that you're out there looking for stuff?
There are, you're getting into the housing end of things, but there are the Department of Housing, CHFA. There is a network where there are information sessions. DDS presents at those sessions. So so these developers get tax credits for if they're serving underserved populations, and folks through DDS would qualify. So DDS will do a presentation at these information sessions with a whole bunch of housing developers that talks a little about what we look for in housing when we're supporting a project. And we've developed a number of these developments. We have those relationships with those developers, but word has definitely gotten out that the supportive housing developments that have opened thus far have gone really, really smoothly. And so we've had more outreach from developers than ever before.
Okay, could I ask another question? So
Sure.
in terms of, like, for instance, the University of Hartford is downsizing. Okay, and, if you looked at places like dormitories that were once being used, layout's good, the facilities are good, reasonably good. does that population, or like a Goodwin College, which is kind of getting into just about everything, getting those kinds of agencies and say, hey, look, this is what we're looking for. What's up? I mean, the people in Goodwin are thinking 5, 10, 15 years ahead. And, part of one of the agencies on this side of the river, I live on the east side, is involved in a program there. And so Project Search. So there seems to be sort of a natural process going on, but has anybody said, hey, we want to have housing, we need housing, supportive housing? And that's pretty key. So just curious about that.
I think there are conversations happening with the Goodwin College and different colleges. One of the requirements of supportive housing is it's an integrated setting. So no more than 25% of the units are set aside for people with intellectual disabilities or whatever the group that is identified. So it's an integrated setting. If we looked at something like that, it would, it would have to be, there would have to be other people identified if it were going to be considered supportive housing. Now, there have been discussions about a transition kind of academies, for young people, their first time out of home, where they might be a little nervous of moving from their home and having a little bit more supports before they move into their own apartment. And so those kind of things, it's not supportive housing, but those kind of discussions have been floated around as possibilities as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking to sort of look outside of the box.
I appreciate your thoughts and your suggestions. I've written some notes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the need is probably much greater because an awful lot of us are so busy dealing with our individuals that it's very hard to keep up with everything. And so there was a book written years ago about negotiating the special ed maze. That's the title of the book. It would be nice if you guys could develop some easy to read, easy to follow, negotiating the supported housing maze or something like that, so that we could open the book and say, okay, I have a question and who do I call? Okay, I didn't know who you were. I've never seen you before. It was, if I didn't see your name written in here, I didn't know who you were. So I think there's a lot of pieces that we, by virtue of trying to survive with our individuals who have all different kinds of needs, multiple needs, we don't get that information. And whenever I get together a group of parents, it's just amazing to me how somebody knows a little bit and somebody knows a little bit. I know going to Special Olympic bowling, all the parents used to sit together and share war stories. And that's, this housing piece is a part of it. I think there's a ton of people. And so looking outside of the box, there's all sorts of vacant buildings in cities, around cities, the colleges, the malls that are almost empty in some places, Manchester being one of them, Enfield being even worse, that could have communities. And there are developers in other parts of the country that are turning malls into some really beautiful, sort of an indoor evergreen walk or whatever the one is out in Farmington Valley. That's all indoors. And so you can integrate the population, with, as they did at Lavender Fields, because I met both populations at there and the one at Bear Valley, because I do work with them out there. I deliver services to them out there. And so it's very interesting to see the balance and how the integration just kind of, was just amazing to me. And so, we need something and we're going to need it badly, probably in the next 5 years or so. How do we negotiate through this maze? Because somebody said earlier, this is not a negative comment about the case managers, but sometimes they don't know either. And I think it's very complicated for some of them, especially have been in the system for a while and aren't sort of keeping up with what's going on. So I'll shut up.
Lots of thoughts around your comments. One specific to supportive housing. We are working with those providers that are currently providing supportive housing services, the FAVARs and the LARC and HARC and CRI that are incredibly generous and willing to share their experiences with other providers. And so one of the things that group is in discussion around is putting together some sort of a resource so that they were kind of the trailblazers, the first development, and so that others can do it more easily and learn from their experiences. And many providers aren't housing specialists, have some guidance around what to look for, what to build in, what to expect. So that's underway. And then your point around, getting the information out. If you go to our website, scroll down a bit it's at the top, it's at the bottom. You can sign up for email communication. One of the things that we've struggled with for years is people's emails change. And so having a really good email distribution list is it's been a challenge to keep up with. And Kevin, who came on before, has taken this on. And if you sign up for email communications, go onto our website. That will be over time a really great way for us to get information out. In the meantime, we'll continue to have these forums, because in these forums, I always learn from other people. And many times, people are asking questions, and I know that they're asking the question that somebody else was just about to ask. So we'll continue to have these forums. And then that group, the communication group that I mentioned, they're tasked with providing resources, easy to read, easy to use, not technical resources, family-friendly resources around what these options look like, how to access them. And so I think you should be seeing the fruits of those efforts in the very, very near future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Elisa, I would like to get to some of the questions in the chat. Adrian, I do see you in the corner with your hand up. We'll get to you in a second. I think Susan Mather has fixed her audio issues. Susan, if you could come on and unmute. Maybe not. I know I often have trouble with Zoom audio myself. Susan, can you hear us? All right, Susan, we can't hear you. If you want to continue to try and fix your audio issue, or again, you can place your question in the chat. The next question, Elisa, comes from Tammy Domian, I apologize, who wants to know who or where do we put a call or a proposal in for review? And Tammy, if you'd like to come on and clarify what proposal you're speaking about.
Actually, Jim Clyburn asked the same question, so that was answered.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next question, and then we'll get to Adrian, comes from Joseph Nee. Joseph wants to know, can you describe the apartments in West Hartford, Bloomfield, etc.? What is the population and the setting?
I can. The apartments in West Hartford are I think the first person moved in today, so I haven't seen the finished apartments there. When I went out, it was under construction, but I've seen the apartments in Canton at Bear Woods. I've seen the apartments at Lavender Fields and Bloomfield, Clover Gardens in Hartford, and Riverfront in Torrington. And they're beautiful apartments. So each is slightly different. They're brand new apartments. They're mixed income. The tenant population is that the applications are handled by the building manager, but if you, I'll describe a little bit more, but the best, I can say it, but it's better to see it. And if you go to the Fourth Tuesday forums and look at the video on supportive housing, there is a couple, Lauren and Scott, who give a tour of their apartment. They take you from the front door, how they enter the building, how they get their mail, their kitchen. It's a beautiful tour of their apartment. So I would highly recommend, I think it's minute 42 of the video. You can skip all of the other people talking and go to the tour of Scott and Lauren's apartment, and you'll get a great idea. There are a mix of efficiencies, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, depending on the interest. We have definitely found more interest in the 1 bedrooms. 2 bedrooms, unless people know one another prior to, you know, they already, you know, they do Special Olympics together, or they're friends, or they know each other through their day program, and they have identified they want to live together. That works well for a 2 bedroom, but a 2 bedroom where the people don't necessarily already know one another, we've found that there's more interest in the 1 bedroom units. They're beautiful. They have the, you know, I have a daughter that's a senior in college. She's had a number of apartments. None of them are as nice as the apartments that I've gone into, because they're really developed. You know, they're brand new. They're high quality. You know, the colors and the decor is a little different. Clover Gardens was historical buildings that were retrofit, so each apartment is a little different. They, you know, they had to abide by the historical guidelines, but they have fireplaces that have mosaic tile. You know, they're just archways and trim that is just lovely. And then the new developments are just, they're beautiful. They're meant to be, there are some accessible units. One of the things that we've learned is accessible for ADA guidelines may not be as accessible as needed for somebody who has a particular motorized wheelchair. And so that's one of the things that we're talking about when this group of providers is meeting is, you know, what are the expectations to make sure that an accessible apartment will really work for somebody based on their needs. One of the things that Favar has done is, because it was a ground up development, they're planning that people will age in place. So they reinforce the ceilings so that if over time people need track systems, that's in place. There's all sorts of assistive technology that's built into these apartments. The way it's structured on a staffing, from a staffing perspective, and I think this is why there is so much excitement about supportive housing, is we've had group homes where there's always staff right there. And for some people, that's exactly what they need. But what supportive housing allows is each person has their own apartment, there's staff available, but not necessarily in their apartment all the time. And then there's technology so that they can very easily access staff. There's staff available in the overnight hours if there's a need. And so it's like the best of both worlds. You have, you've got your space, you know, you've got your privacy, but you've got your supports right there as you need them. One of the other expectations about supportive housing, and this is built right into the definition, is that there are community rooms, there are community activities. It needs to be close to public transportation so that people can access their communities. There need to be amenities nearby within walking distance. And so all of those things are part of supportive housing.
Next, we have Adrian Benjamin. Adrian, if you'd like to unmute and ask your question.
Hello, thank you all so much for
Hey,
doing
Adrian.
this.
Thank you.
Actually, someone just wrote a question in the chat that I was going to bring up. Who's in the Mercurio Leal? I'm sorry if I'm says the apartments don't seem to be available for someone who needs a one-on-one. And I was wondering if that information, it's mostly for higher functioning people. And I think, I mean, I'm involved in a lot of advocacy efforts, and I know a lot of folks that are on the waiting list, and they're hearing about all this exciting stuff, and they're thinking, oh, my kid can move into an IDASH apartment, but I know their kid, and I don't think so. So I think it might be helpful to give families a sense of what like level of need approximately, and I know everybody's different, you know, what level of need are we talking about? My daughter is a 7, and like the Danforth family has to have a one-on-one.
Right.
And, you know, she's in a group home, and we're very grateful, very, very grateful. But I think a lot of families might get the impression that this is going to work for you know, people that
For
just aren't that familiar with all. So I think using a level of need model or some kind of guideline might be helpful to all the folks out there that are trying to understand this better.
I appreciate the question, and I can give a general answer. Most of the people that are in supportive housing have a level of need between 3 and 6. They generally are able to spend some time alone and access supports that are nearby in the unit. But that leads me, Adrian, to something that I didn't say previously that I really want to emphasize. As we look at the system transformation, that moving on plan, where some homes may be, you know, there may be some people who could move into supportive housing or are interested in another option. One of the things that the whole transformation plan builds in is for those existing homes to really be able to also transform to maybe be able to provide more medical supports or more behavioral or clinical supports, so that those group homes, they're gonna, some people, that is the absolute appropriate level of support, and it's exactly what is needed. As part of this ARPA transformation, it allows those homes where maybe folks that are a little bit more independent and are ready to move into something different, move on, and then that home has the opportunity to, and there are some incentives built in to maybe have more medical supports or more clinical support, so that people who have that higher level of need really have the supports they need in that setting. Our goal is to have the full continuum. And I think, you know, there was a point in time where we had CRS, CLA, CCH, and then you're in your own apartment. And so we're really looking at a fluid continuum. And what supportive housing does is it takes the good things about being in your own apartment, IHS, and melds them with access to supports that wasn't there before. And so some people are just happy campers in their own apartment with nobody nearby and no staff, and they're great. Some people get lonely. Some people have felt isolated, and some people really just need to know that there's support nearby when they need it. And that's what supportive housing does, is it takes that ability to have some independence with the safeguard of having supports nearby and puts those things together. Not for everyone. Somebody that needs one-to-one support may need, you know, just a model that offers those supports.
Our next question comes from Rick Rothstein. Rick wants to know, how can DDS compete for slots in housing that is already in very short supply?
Hi, Rick. I don't see you. Where are you? Hi, Rick. I think housing supports have been a struggle. We see this when somebody, you know, is in need of housing, especially when there's a quick time frame. And our folks don't always have a credit history, right? They don't always have the types of things that landlords are looking for. That, you know, they don't, maybe you have a history of renting apartments and a reference from a previous landlord. They may not have all of those things. There is a lot of activity. I was in a meeting earlier today where completely separate discussion, but how some of these federal funds are being used to really create affordable housing. So I think there are efforts going on outside of DDS through Department of Housing and CHFA and those other entities to increase the stock of affordable housing. One of the things I can say just from the meetings that I have participated on, I'm not a housing specialist, but I've had the opportunity to be in a lot of these meetings with developers where they're all about, you know, having good tenants, having steady income. And I will tell you that we're a really desirable group to work with. Some of the other populations are a little bit more transient, may have challenges, you know, as if you look at maybe a homeless population, sometimes it's really challenging to get the documentation that's needed. I think we've been a really good partner. We've been able to be responsive. People are very steady. The rent gets paid. I think word has gotten out that you know, partnering and having folks from our service system as part of these developments has worked. So I'm hopeful that that we will continue to participate in these forums for developers, but I know that there's also word of mouth. I know that the developer that developed Riverfront in Torrington is now working with us to develop some more options. And so I know that the developer that worked on Bear Woods also worked on Lavender Gardens, you know, and so you develop relationships, and so hopefully that'll be helpful over time as well.
Next, we have Skip Dugas. Skip, I see you have your hand raised if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Did that work?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, so I got a couple of things. I wanted to back up to your ARPA discussion. So you had mentioned that you were sorting out the providers that are available. And also you said you were working with financial intermediaries kind of improve that process. I'm involved with self-direction. We've had DSS services. We've done self-direction for a while, and we're also working with DDS now with you guys. Are you guys working together to improve this? Because what I've recently discovered is there's about 14 or 15,000 people out there that could be available to me for self-direction, but I only know my little world. I know the 5 people that I hired. If I knew everybody within 10 miles of me, then it would start to provide backup and stuff like that. If there were job boards, but anyway, hopefully you guys are working together on all this, because there's so much overlap and redundancy. There's 2 25-page applications that I have to get my same people to go through, one for DDS, one for DSS. And it's if we could somehow organize that a lot better, it would be incredible. So
let me respond to that before you get to your other points. Let me respond to that because I'm so glad you asked that. Yes, yes, yes. We are working very closely with DSS. So the ARPA funding that's available, we started with phase 1, building out our employment platform with rewarding work. We already had a relationship with them. We knew that we really needed to expand options for people. So that's phase 1. In the meantime, we are working very closely with DSS, which will be a much larger piece, but of how we can integrate, just as you said, so that there isn't that redundancy, so that the process is not duplicated and the resources are available across the board. So I'm so glad you asked that. That is a bigger process, so that takes a little bit more time, but we work really, really closely with DSS.
You had mentioned that there were stakeholder meetings. Am I a stakeholder, or is that stakeholders within the DDS or DSS organizations, because I'm wondering, are there ways that I can get involved? Because, you know, the people on this call have hands-on experience trying to use these systems. And sometimes, honestly, it can be pretty painful. So we'd love to share some of that. Can somehow we can be involved?
I can say that, yes, there's some way that you can be involved. I will never turn down an offer like that. The stakeholder, there have been a variety of stakeholder meetings, but what I will do is reach out to the team that's working particularly around those initiatives. And I will connect you with a member of that team. And Gunnar, are you able to see contact information?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay, great. So if you could just note that down, we'll make that connection, and thank you for that offer.
Okay, a couple of other things. So the online, you mentioned all the online information that's available, and there's a ton of it out there that you can, let's just talk specifically about the providers. So there's even a spreadsheet with this 315 providers available. The challenge is that the data that's out there doesn't help me answer questions like, I live in West Hartford, give me all the providers within 15 miles that provide transportation. I have piles of providers, but right now I'm seriously reading 300 different PDFs trying to figure out what to do. And so it's there, but it's not organized in a fashion that's really usable to people. So FYI, my background is systems and technology, so I notice these things as I'm peeling through all of this stuff. So
I appreciate that. And even as a frequent user, there are times I understand what you're saying. It is not in the most user-friendly version for the information that you're looking to glean. You'd almost have to contact those providers to see if they're able to provide those services. I think we can talk with, so the next step, our communications group has indicated the next step that they want to delve into is our website. And so I will bring this feedback back to them. And again, I have your contact information. And so there may be outreach in that regard as well, Skip.
I would love to help, however, because we're, you know, as everybody here is, we're into this pretty deep. So the more we can work together to make it better, life is good for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, our goal is, and with any of our resources, that they have to be user-friendly. And our website, we have constraints, you know, we have constraints within our state website, but the consultants we're working with have experience in working within the state website to make them as user-friendly as possible. And so we meet weekly and can bring that particular request to the forefront.
Last thing, do I have Gunnar's contact information in case I don't hear from him in a couple of days? I may reach out. Is that available someplace?
Yes, Gunnar can put that in the chat.
Yep. Skip, I'll throw that in there right
now. Domo arigato. Thank you very much. I'll mute now.
Thank you. Stick around.
And Elisa, I just want to add a little bit to that, just because we are working on the governor outside of just DDS. The governor has mentioned that he wants to make, you know, a lot of state services accessible online and build out the state as a whole online presence. So DDS, in my role as communications director, DDS is working with the state of Connecticut and the state of Connecticut's working with a few other larger agencies like ourselves in actually like starting this process with our whole website. So outside of the ARPA thing. So we've heard from you. I know you've probably think that everyone comes here and complains about the website and no one's listening, but we are, it's happening, it's slow, but it's methodical, and we're trying to make it focus specifically for individuals and families.
So we'll take.
I see Diane has her hand up.
Hi, thank you for this forum. I'm a little confused when it comes to residential because I hear about a continuum and then I hear moving people out of group homes. My son, if I have to stand on my head, will never move out of a group home. It's not appropriate. But if you start moving people out of his home, what happens to those beds? I don't want him to end up the only person in a house.
So, if I'm going to go back to where I started. These plans
Okay.
will all be person-centered and team discussions. And if a person is receiving supports in a CLA and based on their needs and their what makes sense for them, that's absolutely the level of support, and that's it. What if people move out? Then we're going to maintain that CLA. You won't be living there alone. You won't be living there alone, but CLAs are designed to support people who have greater needs. And so maybe, and this would be part of the transformation plan that the agency would identify. So maybe they're going to build in some more medical supports. And then people who have a higher level medical need but need that CLA level of support will be able to be supported in that environment. And so I think there may be changes to some CLAs, but only to make sure that those supports align with the needs of the people living there. And so it's built right in that
Okay.
if a provider says, you know, I know these two people have expressed interest. We know within their planning process, this is something that they're looking at. And what we'd like to do, because the other two people who live here have some medical needs, is maybe enhance our nursing supports and then look at two people moving in that have similar medical needs. That's exactly how that would be a very appropriate plan that would be considered.
But what about people who don't necessarily need medical support, but they are rather low functioning, their safety is at issue and things like that? So now you've got a couple of empty beds. Are you going to go back to the people who are, quote, on what we've called the waiting list and who have lower functioning people and move them in?
Our hope is that over time, as these additional opportunities are available for people, it will open up opportunities for people that are waiting for services. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
It's good to meet you.
Same here.
Elisa, I do want to take a couple more questions in the chat, and then we'll get to Rick and Faye Lenz, who have their hand up. The first one comes from Kimberly Gentile, who wants to know, how difficult would it be to start your own DDS approved day program?
There's a process. I keep referring to our website, and we also have a very wonderful person at DDS. Her name is Deborah Lynch, that works with entities that are interested in becoming a qualified provider. It's a process. We have expectations. There are policies that would need to be in place. There would need to be a table of organization. There need to be a principal of entity or an administrator with certain experience. You know, there are requirements, but it's something that happens that, you know, we get new agencies established each year. I would suggest you search on our website, becoming a qualified provider. And if that doesn't answer your questions, then Deborah Lynch at DDS, and all DDS email is the same. It's the first name dot last name at ct.gov. Would be a great resource as far as answering your questions.
Our next question comes from Sharon. I apologize if I mispronounced this last name. Generakos. She wants to know, is ADA transportation considered when deciding to build or enhance supportive housing? She says, I don't think there is a service to Canton. This makes it difficult for individuals who work and rely on this transportation.
It is considered within the proposal. So Canton is probably the furthest from public transportation. I know you can walk down the hill and there's a bus stop there at the corner. But there has to be a mechanism for people to access their communities. And so it is part of the proposal. The agency's got to really spell out how they're going to support people, what is available as far as transportation. And it's different in each part of the state. We know that Connecticut has, you know, areas where public transportation is very robust. And then we have areas where there's not a lot at all as far as public transportation. So what that transportation may look like may vary, but they are required to identify how transportation will be provided. I will say that transportation is a major issue. It comes up when we talk about employment. It comes up when we talk about housing, when we talk about accessing services in any way. And we have, depending on where you live, the transportation options are different. There's, because of this, we just stood up a transportation committee that is looking at how to expand transportation opportunities to people served by the department. There was a meeting today. They had somebody from Department of Transportation come in. They had somebody from another state agency that's developed expanded transportation services. There are a lot of family members on there. It's an incredibly, I think they've only met 3 times, and the resources that they've already pulled together have been pretty amazing. So transportation is an area that we're looking at in general, because it's going to be a key piece to, I will say what the commissioner always says, when he talks to self-advocates, they want 3 things. They want a place to live, they want a place to work, and they want a way to get back and forth. And without that transportation piece, the other 2 pieces don't work. So we're looking very closely at transportation. We're also looking at technology. Assistive technology relates to transportation. There's some really, really good apps that help with travel training. There's some really nice virtual reality materials that help people navigate transportation. So there's a lot happening in the technology arena that should be helpful as far as transportation goes.
So next we'll take the question from Rick and Faye Lenz. Rick and Faye, if you want to unmute.
Here we
Got
go.
it.
Hi, Elisa.
Hi.
This has been great. This has been very informative. I just had a couple of comments because you were talking about different options for affordable living. And our son, Dan, who is serviced by Favor, lives in Avon Crossing. And it's actually, he calls it an apartment, but they're townhouses. And Favor has X number in there. And we have on-site staffing, not in the apartments, quote unquote, but on site, so that someone's accessible to kids 24/7. But it's been extremely successful having that. So that's another option. It's an integrated environment. It's low income housing, and it's worked very successfully. It's access to grocery stores and things like that, banks. Transportation. Yeah, they have transportation though. It's also available to public transportation down the road.
Thank you for sharing that. I haven't been over there, but I am familiar with the setting, and I think it's very similar to supportive housing. I think maybe the difference may be RAP vouchers versus rent subsidy.
Right.
that has been in place, and so I think you probably get a nice flavor. It's very similar to what I'm describing with supportive housing, and I've heard that the townhouses are lovely. Those are the ingredients that seem to be really, really helpful. And so the only reason that's not considered supportive housing is just the difference between the RAP vouchers and the rent subsidy. But the services, having the staff available on site, exactly the same as supportive housing.
Right. And then the other place is Dorset's Crossing in Simsbury, which that contractor and builder is the same one who did Lavender Fields. And that started out as an integrated environment, but people with MS were moving in, and then people with intellectual and developmental disabilities as well. But that came through our town council, which Mary Glassman was the first selectman at the time. And she insisted that they have housing for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So that's another option, to go through your local forms of government, town government, and talk with them about putting some pressure on to insist that when these facilities are being built or in existing facilities, that there's available apartments and townhouses.
Thanks, Faye. And
Sure.
Susan, I see you have your hand up.
There you go. Thank you. Just again, in the idea category, our situation is that my daughter's in a wheelchair and needs, I would think in the, thinking of the future without us here, she's going to need a combination of in-home supports and what you were just talking about, the
Remote supports,
say it again.
remote supports.
Yes, remote supports and in-home supports. And I don't think that there's a model that does that right now. So just to throw that out there.
So there is, that's our newest service model. Remote supports in combination with in-home supports. And I want to thank you. Susan and her daughter just participated in the most recent Fourth Tuesday Forum, and just gave a wonderful presentation. So thank you. If a person has the ability to spend some time home alone, but would need to the option of accessing somebody remotely during that period, that would be what remote supports would provide. So there'd still be in-home supports, not all the time, not 24/7, but during those times that those in-home supports are not in place, there's the ability to access supports, and that could be voice activated, that could be that two-way communication that I was talking about. And remote supports is an area, we had a pilot program that occurred this past year. It went very, very well. And now that service, we're just qualifying providers for remote support. So it's available, and it's just really going from pilot stage to rolling out more broadly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
So Elisa, I do want to get, Susan Mather did place her question in the chat. She did provide a little bit of background, so I'll read through it and then highlight the two questions within. So she says, we have an amazing son. He's complex medically and can only use one nursing agency in our region because of his complex care. They won't even open a file on us, so we have zero nursing. We can't offer a decent wage and insurance to a caregiver for self-direction, so that's not an option. We don't have a one-on-one for a day program, even if that was right for him. Are you considering a reasonable wage for complex caregivers and state insurance? The nursing shortage isn't going away. The great thing with the CFC and self-directed programs is it allows caregivers to perform tasks that wouldn't be allowed in a facility. How can you help our families that have essentially no help? Rewarding work sounds great in theory, but not at the current wage and no insurance. So she wants to know, are we considering a reasonable wage for complex caregivers and state insurance? And how can families who have essentially no assistance receive that help?
Thanks, Susan. I'm glad you got your question in the chat. Nursing supports have been an area. So we've had overall workforce issues, and then it's especially in the area of nursing. There have been shortages, and that's in self-direction as well as within the provider community. We have increased our rates. So we have a service called healthcare coordination. We increased the rate of healthcare coordination very significantly. We've actually increased it twice, with the hope that by doing so, we'll attract more nurses that are interested in providing that kind of service. The workforce stabilization funds certainly have the ability to, and I know in some cases have been used to attract nursing. As far as your particular case, it sounds like it sounds like you're already engaged in self-direction in the North region. I think, is Jessica Sundell involved at all? A little bit. I think maybe we want to dig more deeply into your particular case to see what we might be able to do. It sounds like there are particulars that I'd probably need some more information. But I think we can probably at least brainstorm to see if there are additional resources that may be available.
So Elisa, we do have a couple more questions left in the chat. The next one comes from Edward Connolly, who wants to know, would having a housing complex made up with elderly and special needs persons work well? There seems to be a large need for both.
There, some of the meetings that I've been in on the housing end of things, different programs have different criteria. There are some that you have to be over a certain age. And so you have to be over a certain age, and you can be somebody with an intellectual disability that's over that age, or a community member that's over that age, but the age threshold is built in. I have seen really beautiful communities that have people that are seniors living with people who have intellectual disabilities, and it's gone really well. I think it really depends on the needs and the interests of the individuals. I do know that certain housing complexes or developments have certain parameters, and so that would be something that would probably have to be explored further. But I, in my experience, have seen that work very well.
Elisa, our last question in the chat comes from Deborah Ramaya. Deborah would like to know, will there be more group homes built with the ARPA funds? All I'm hearing here is supported housing.
I don't know that new group homes will be built with ARPA funds, but I think what will happen is our existing group homes, and we have a lot of existing group homes. Those group homes, I think, will be opportunities will become available in those group homes for additional people. So I think we'll utilize the stock that we have, and I don't know the number I should know the number, but I don't. I think it's, I think it's something like 800 across the state. I don't know that we need new group homes. I think we need to make sure that that resource is available for people who need that level of support. And by expanding those other support options, I think our goal is to give the right level of support to the right person at the right time in their life. And so I think with this initiative, we're going to expand those CLA opportunities, because there will be people that have other options, and that should free up some opportunities for people who need that level of support.
Elisa, so that does it with the chat. I do want to mention Christine Skeggs is asking for someone to contact her. Christine, I do have your email address, and I'll make sure to get an email out to you first thing tomorrow. But that does it for the chat. Elisa, we don't have any other hands up.
I want to, a number of you have thanked me for being here tonight. It is such my pleasure to be here tonight. And I really appreciate each of you taking the time to join me this evening, taking a couple hours out of your evening and asking such good questions, but also generating such good ideas. And I love these forums. I just love having the opportunity to just connect and hear what's working and hear areas that we need to attend to, and I really appreciate this opportunity. I will channel again Commissioner Chef because he ends these forums each time with acknowledgement that this is, this is a big initiative, and it's coming at a challenging time when we do have workforce issues. So you get the biggest opportunity of likely my career, of probably of our generation, coming at a time where there are some historic staffing struggles. And we acknowledge that challenge. But he says, if not now, when? And if not us, who? And the point being that it's all hands on deck. If we continue to communicate closely, if we continue to work together, we can see some amazing transformational opportunities happen in people's lives. And it's pretty exciting place to be. So thank you.